I'm Michelle Pacansky-Brock, and I am lead PI for the Humanizing Online STEM grant project. I'm part of a group of 7 co-PIs that are working together on this grant, and it has the fingerprints of countless people on it. And you are about to meet 5 of them. I'm very excited for this next session. This is our panel session about where we get to hear from participants from the Humanizing Academy. And I'm pausing with my words because my brain is thinking about something different. And before I go there, before we jump into the panel, first of all, I'd like to invite our panelists to turn your webcams on so we can go ahead and be ready to get started. I wanted to share, not the website, I wanted to share our Padlet because we haven't taken a look at it together. We've been sharing this link in the chat, and I'll do it again right now. This is a place where you are welcome to contribute if you have things to add to respond to the prompts that we've been adding here. My colleague, Kim Vincent-Layton, one of our co-PIs, is kind of managing the Padlet. She's our Padlet facilitator for the summit. And so she's going to be adding any prompts that might come up along the way, but we've got some really great responses here with regards to reflections about favorite research points and wonderful. I love this prompt, what's resonating with you. It's just a great way to keep our finger on the pulse of what everyone's thinking about. And there were some great contributions added during Dr. Estrada's keynote talk in our last session. So just wanted to call your attention to that and invite you to jump in if you'd like. Also, one more time, I'm going to put a link to our website in the chat where you'll find lots of goodies about the project for those of you who haven't seen it yet, including our events page right here, which is about the summit. And this is where the archives from today will be posted in a week or so. Okay. Oops. So let's go ahead and get started with our next session for the Humanizing Online STEM Summit. Again, I'm Michelle Pacansky-Brock, your host for today, and today's panel is titled Exploring the Potential Impact and Challenges of Humanizing. And I would like to welcome our panelists, Angelica Cortez from Modesto Junior College, Benny Ng from CSU Channel Islands and Los Angeles Pierce College, Paula Shales, I said your name wrong, sorry Paula, our instructional designer from Foothill College, and Roxanne Schroeder from Cal Poly Humboldt. Roxanne is representing biology and environmental science and management, and Young Sub Kwan from kinesiology over at Cal Poly Humboldt. Very happy to have all of you with me. And you know what we're going to get started with before we get into our questions? I have a video that I'm going to share that is going to kind of give us a good launching point for this conversation with our Academy alumni. This is a 3-minute video that showcases what the Humanizing Academy is. Well, I shouldn't say what it is, but what some of the takeaways from the Academy have been to some of our participants. So I'm just going to play this and I invite you to enjoy.
So before I went to the Academy, I didn't have a really good, deep understanding of the equity gap in online courses. I could see that online textbooks often were expensive and that a lot of times many of my students could not afford them. I was worried about communication with students, things like that.
I had read a little bit about equity gaps between, genders, between minoritized groups. I had very primitive ideas as to how deep the impact was.
Access always to good broadband that didn't seem like in where we are in Stanislaus County, it seemed like it was unequal. Some students had good access and other students had very poor access.
There's different cultural differences between people who come from what we call the high context versus the low context cultures. What I learned from the class that really was a fundamental shift for me is that to teach to both crowds. And typically the way we're taught in college is with the low context culture, the individualistic culture. that you do this because it's good for you only, right? And then the high context culture is like, this is good for you because it's good for the community, it's good for your family. And you make closer bonds with the students because you treat them like people. You say, okay, who are you? Why are you important?
Knowledge expanded by much after going through the affiliated readings and watching some videos on the very problematic issue of the equity or inequity that we have in regards to women representation, to people of color. It became an eye-opener for me to see what ways an instructor can do and invent in the classroom in order to include those students and have them be empowered and be represented in the best way possible.
Just making the course more acceptable, making STEM careers seem like they're for everybody would help with closing the equity gap.
I felt like I had been given permission to be the professor I always wanted to be, to spend more time with people and to have those communications, and not to be that cold, distant professor that is the model that I was raised with, that I knew that I could be that person I wanted to be. So now even in my face-to-face, even though the academy is for online, I have even changed my face-to-face courses.
What has changed is everything. The way I look at my classroom as an arena to welcome all my students without judgment, without making assumptions, without preconceived notions, without implicit biases that I became aware of, some of which I did not recognize I had, made me develop a very keen look at things and look at it from a very different lens.
I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. The reflections in that video for me are really symbolic of the self-awareness and the growth that we're seeing through the academy. And so I really want to celebrate and thank those who participated in sharing in that. So some folks are asking for the link. If you go over to our website, humanizeol.org, and click on the Humanizing Online STEM Academy page, you'll find the video at the top there, and you can grab it from YouTube there if you want and share it. Sharing is caring. That's what I think. And in our earlier session, we showed this graphic and this slide. I want to show it again because it may be helpful context for our conversation for those of you who aren't familiar with the humanizing model that we're referring to. But this is the model, warm demand pedagogy, and the 8 humanized online teaching elements. This is what the participants that go through the academy engage with. They complete all of these elements. They produce a humanizing showcase with reflections and examples of their elements. So it's very, very hands-on, and they use a lot of different technologies in addition to engaging in that deep, personal, critical self-reflection. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing now, and we're going to get started with our panel. Let me go ahead and showcase our panelists here. If you could turn on your videos. Panelists, hi Benny, I see you. Hi Young, I see you. And I am missing Angelica. There, I see you, Angelica. Okay, and I think I'll spotlight myself. Should I do that too, I guess? Yeah. Okay, hope that, is that working for everybody on your end? I see something different. Okay, good. Thank you, Julie. I see your thumbs. Awesome. Welcome, everyone. So I'm going to ask some questions. And our first question is a really simple one. Introduce yourself. And in one word, share what the Humanizing Online STEM Academy has meant to you. So let's go in this order. Angelica, Benny, Paula, Roxanne, and Young. We'll keep it simple and go in alphabetical order. So I'll turn it over to you, Angelica.
Hello, everyone. I'm Angelica Cortez. I teach at Math at Modesto Junior College. I've been there for 5 years full time. And the word that I'm going to use to describe my experience is empathy.
Thank you, Angelica. Jenny, we'll pass it to you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Benny. I teach chemistry at CSU Channel Islands and also Los Angeles Pierce College. One word to describe for the Humanizing Online STEM Academy will be connection.
Hi, Paula.
Hi, I'm Paula Shales. I thought I was next. I just wasn't sure. And I do instructional design at Foothill College. And my one word is honoring.
Hi, I'm Roxanne Schrader. I teach some upper division GE STEM courses. So many of my students are not STEM majors. And I teach at Cal Poly Humboldt in the biology department and environmental science and management. And my word is empowered.
Hi, Young-Suk Kon at Cal Poly Humboldt. I teach exercise physiology. My one word is building up. One word, building up.
We like rule breakers here, Young. Building up. Okay. Love those words. I'm just going to jot those down. And I'd like to invite anyone here. I know that we have some alumni in attendance today. And if you did complete the academy, we'd like to invite you to just share in the chat what your one word would be to describe what the academy has meant to you. And I have a garbage truck outside my window, so I apologize if you're hearing that at this moment in time. Next question, folks. What was it about the academy that made it so valuable to you? Making the assumption that everyone here volunteered to participate. So I of course have the assumption that it was valuable to them, but we just want to hear more about your unique experiences. So what was it that made it so valuable to you? And Paula, we'll get started with you. And you are currently muted, Paula.
Oh, thank you. Zoom, here we are. I just wanted to say that I just loved this course and I just so highly recommend it to everybody. But it really modeled, how to build a community of care and mutual respect where everyone's valued for the person they are, not based on any judgments or credentials. Very important to me. And we also experienced how a course can set high standards and be warm, supportive, and accepting all at the same time. And it was really demonstrated in the PACT, where an instructor, creates it at the beginning of a course, and they set, what their expectations are, and also what they expect their students, what the expectations are from their students. And the thing that made it really powerful was that not only that, they asked the question of the students, like, what is it that you would like to add? And to me, this was really powerful because it showed that it was a sharing of power, and it showed the students that the instructor really cares what the students think, and that the learning process is a collaboration. And I mean, this course was, pretty demanding, but at the same time, it was really supportive. So it really showed the warm demander. And so instead of feeling like I didn't belong since I'm not faculty, I felt really supported and that my contributions were valued. And so I can understand how, many students would feel this way. And this course showed me how we can help to alleviate that by understanding, stereotype threat, imposter syndrome, and being empathetic and not afraid of showing vulnerability, and by revealing our authentic selves. So it's when trust is established, stress and anxiety are reduced, and students can focus on learning and expressing who they are through their learning. And that to me just really speaks to my values. So I just loved it.
Thank you, Paul. It's really powerful to hear you talk about that breaking down of hierarchies and how creating that environment where the hierarchies are flattened out is really imperative to learning, but just being able to feel like you are able to be your own authentic self in the environment. So thank you. Really powerful hearing your reflections. And Benny, what would you like to add to that?
Thank you. So I agree with what Paula has said. So for me, I think going through this like 6-week training program, first of all, it reinforced my teaching philosophy. You say, okay, I know my class is difficult, but at the same time, my student will feel like they're being supported to be continue to do well. They feel motivated. So I think a lot of the elements is like reinforcing my teaching belief. I think that's very important. And then the assignment that we have to do, we can actually use it for the classes that you're using. So for my welcome video, I can show to my student that, hey, if you just look at my name, you may not know who I am, or just looking at a picture of me, you don't know. But by being able to introduce myself, then we can start forming some representation, right? Something that I struggled with when I was a student, I share my experience with them. I think right away you're forming that connection, try to break down that hierarchy. So that's what I would like to add.
Benny, that's a beautiful thing to reflect on there about sharing your own vulnerability with your students and how that starts to break down the hierarchy that Paula was talking about. Can you share a little bit about the facilitators? Now, I was one of the facilitators, so obviously I'm biased here, but this is something that we've heard, is that the way the Academy was facilitated was an important part of your professional growth and learning. And I really want to underscore this now that we've got the Academy out there and it's something adoptable. Facilitating this thing is no small task. It's very intensive. So I really want to stress this. But Benny, do you have any, or maybe Roxanne wants to build onto this too, but Benny, do you have anything to add about that?
Yes, so for the facilitation, definitely, because it's kind of almost like a modeling. When I getting feedback from you're my facilitator, Michelle, then I was able to know, okay, this is kind of how to do it. It's not really explicit, but implicitly it's like, okay, I'm creating those assignments. How am I getting the feedback? I think those are reinforcing the concept, like this is how you want to do the proper modeling. I think oftentimes that's what we try to do in class. Like, okay, how do you write an abstract, right? We try to show them this is how you write a scientific abstract, right? We try to do some modeling and we refine it. I think throughout that 6 weeks process, I think we kind of grabbing how to do the facilitation and communication with our students to implement those elements. I think it's not just the assignment that we're doing, but it's also like how we communicate with each other. And those are the things that you can apply with your student, with your colleagues in the department, and also with other people as well. So I think that's very useful and powerful.
Thank you, Benny. Roxanne, what would you like to add to that?
Yeah, I strongly feel that the facilitators and their warm demanding was completely what helped me succeed. I have a story that the first summer after we started doing the online teaching, and by the way, I'm a brand new online teacher. I've been thinking about it would be fun, but I never had the opportunity until the pandemic. The first summer, I was not involved in the Academy, but I was doing a different professional development that was lasting approximately the same length of time. And shortly after it started, my father died. And I connected with the facilitators and I told them that, and they said everything's fine. And yet I kept getting all these automated emails that said, you haven't completed whatever it is. And boy, did that strike me, because I ended up dropping out of it. I couldn't handle the additional stress. Now, last summer when I was doing the Academy, finally, my family was able to get together to celebrate my father's life. So I spent a large part of the Academy actually traveling and working on this at the same time, which I was nervous about because I thought this is going to be really difficult. But again, the facilitators were just wonderful, because if something came up, I was actually traveling on the day that something was due. they said, yeah, that's great. Turn it in when you get it done. And I didn't get all these, emails saying you're not doing what you're supposed to do. And that warmth, expecting that I was going to be able to do it, believing in me, made all the difference. And that's actually changed how I teach my classes. I have lots of students to keep track of. So what I've actually done is I've created a spreadsheet with a different table for each set of students. And when they tell me something, or when I look at my getting to know you survey, I make notes. So I know if somebody sends me an email and says, hey, I was just diagnosed with COVID, I know I'm not going to get anything from them for a little while, but instead of sending them an email that says, why haven't you turned it in? I send them an email that says, hey, I hope you're starting to feel better. Please keep in touch so I know when to expect that you'll be able to get things done. And I think that's really helped to keep more of my students engaged in the class instead of dropping out. And again, the way the facilitators modeled that for me has really, really helped.
It's really powerful to hear how the cues resonate with the human, right? Those automated can be super helpful, but what we don't know is the negative impact that they can have on a person when they're in this place of stress and trauma. And I'm very sorry for your loss. Thank you for sharing. I also lost my father last summer while I was facilitating the academy. And if it wasn't for the grace and empathy of my co-facilitators, Kim and Maritez, and all of the participants in the class, I don't know what I would have done. So it goes both ways. It absolutely goes both ways. Thank you for sharing. And we're going to turn it over to Angelica to answer the same question, and then we'll go on to a new question. Hi, Angelica.
Hi. So I think for me, what is always really valuable, and I found it, I experienced that with the Humanizing Online STEM Academy, is to be put in the position of a student, and to be reminded what it's like to be a student, because, it's been several years. And when I was in this professional development, I was in the second cohort. So the first cohort started probably in May, I think. And I was jealous of that first cohort because they didn't really have much that they could do. We were still stuck inside, not being able to do much. And when I started the cohort, I had already plans made to go backpacking and camping and, all these things. And I was like, oh, this is going to be due and I'm supposed to be backpacking. I'm not going to have Wi-Fi. I can't do this. And I really appreciated that in the Getting to Know You survey, one of the questions that's asked is about what may be challenging for you to complete this. And so I said, well, honestly, I have all these social engagement plans that I've made, and I'm going to be backpacking, and I'm not going to have reception that week. So I can't turn that in at that time. And I really appreciated the empathy. And the facilitators were like, that's fine. You can just turn it in after you come back. Or if you want to turn it in before, you might be able to do that as well. And so, I was that student that was always turning stuff in late because I was, trying to catch up with friends and family that I hadn't seen in over a year. And so that made me reflect on, my students. My class is not their priority. They have other commitments. They have families to take care of. And so I really have found that question helpful. And I look at what my students say when they're replying to me, what could get in the way of them successfully completing my course. And so I make a note of that. And that's been helpful for me to understand where the students are coming from. Some of them have 2 jobs and, 2 kids and are pregnant. And I had a student give birth during the semester and, completed my class. Just being in that position of remembering what it's like to have other priorities and being flexible about turning stuff in late. I think that was just really helpful. Not only that, but the structure of the course, where I had to turn in stuff, I think 3 days a week, and I knew when those things would be due. I implemented that in my course, in my online course, and students reflected in Flipgrid videos that was very helpful for them too. But that structure that helped them just to keep on track and not fall behind, or know that there would be some room to fall behind that was very helpful for them.
So I'm hearing a theme there. We've already heard the getting to know you survey twice, right? That's super helpful, and love that. It's transformed my teaching too. And to know that you can turn on a notes column in the Canvas grades and take the notes right there, and only you see those notes, but the students don't, right? Life-changing, super, super helpful. And that's how we do the warm nudging as opposed to the cold automated nudges, which drove Roxanne out of her other professional development course. So powerful, powerful takeaways there. And Angelica, we too we knew it was going to be so important to support people to get out and enjoy the world, because last summer was when we just had a little bit of an opening, right? So when travel restrictions started loosening up. And so we really wanted to we knew that was important for everyone's well-being. So we're glad that you are able to enjoy that part of your life and still complete the academy. So thank you. Next question. One of the themes we have heard from academy participants is that they feel more authentic in their teaching and work, like they feel more validated to be who they are, as opposed to what a professor or instructional designer is supposed to be. So the question is, can you relate to that? What does that look like in your own teaching or work? And first, we're going to go to Roxanne and then to Paula.
I have to remember to unmute myself. Yeah, I really resonate with that. In fact, I feel like I can be myself. I've been given permission to be myself. I went to school in the 80s and 90s, a long time ago, and my model of a professor was Herr Professor Doctor, a very formal, very rigid. And that's not me. That's not my personality at all. But that was the role model that I had seen. And I wasn't comfortable doing that, but I didn't always feel comfortable being myself, because I was afraid that, somebody was going to come in and watch my teaching and say, you're not doing the right thing. And I have been a lot more comfortable being myself. And, when my allergies are really bad, like they are right now, and I trip over my tongue, I can say, blah, 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 and, watch my students kind of laugh about it and just say it's the way it is. And I find that more than, I used to say, hey, students, like many of my students, I was a first generation college student from a low income background, and I never wanted to talk to my professors because I would be bothering them. And so what I used to say is, hey, I'm not scary, come talk to me. And now with, again, the Getting to Know You survey and the introductory videos that you have on your welcome, I call the liquid syllabus the welcome syllabus, or on your homepage on Canvas, the students already sort of know me before they need to talk to me. And I find that they're more willing to come and talk to me. So I don't have to say, I'm not scary, and then wonder why nobody shows up to my office hours, which is what used to happen.
Thanks, Roxanne. Paula, you have something to share?
Sure, yes. Actually, I'm going to share what being, how you, Michelle, you were our facilitator, how you modeled, what it was like, being authentic and vulnerable. And it really touched my heart. And you're, sharing your personal stories. It just, reaching out to us through, individually through video was, just really, really important. And I felt so inspired, and it really motivated me to work really hard in this class, to make all the deadlines and to create something that was actually worthy of this course. And so this experience makes me realize how students probably, might feel in a class. And so I take this, and when I work with faculty, I convey what my experience was so they can get an idea of what a student might feel like in a class. And so we learned, the different tools and things that can be done that would help. And so that's where I feel I can be more authentic when I work one-on-one with faculty. But as far as feeling like I can be who I am in this role as an instructional designer, I'm still working on that, because there's the whole infrastructure of the institution. And so there are lots of, issues with that. So that's where I'm, working on. I guess that's about it.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And I think what you're alluding to is, again, more hierarchy, more power hierarchy within our organizations. And in the academy, right, we had STEM faculty, we had instructional designers. So there's power hierarchy, traditional power hierarchies there. We also had 4-year participants and 2-year participants. And there's traditionally a kind of an implied hierarchy there. And I had some folks kind of raise their eyebrows to that, like, well, what's that going to be like? And I don't know about you all, but I thought the level of collegiality was amazing, and connection and support for each other. So that's really powerful to see how important intentionally and carefully, mindfully cultivating an inclusive environment can really flatten out those hierarchies. And it means that it can also happen on our institutions, in our institutions. Like, this is all about just living. This isn't about teaching. This is like a practice for us to bring into our lives. It has to start at the top with presidents. It has to start with vice presidents. The deans are involved, the faculty, the staff, everybody, right? Everybody is in this together. And it matters when we're at the grocery store too. It's all about how we approach every single day. So thank you for that, Paula, and for introducing that important notion too.
Thank you.
I want to let those in the audience know that I'm not skipping some people. If you're thinking, wow, you're really leaving out some people, we did work on these questions in advance, and I asked the panelists which ones they wanted to respond to. So I just was a little bit aware of that impression might be out there. So this next question we'll be hearing from Benny and Young. And it's kind of a long question, so I'll just read through it slowly. It's about our research findings, and I want to hear whether or not some of these findings are resonating with our alumni. So our preliminary research findings, which were showcased earlier today for those of you who were available to join us, they show some interesting changes in the perceptions and attitudes of STEM faculty. We're seeing that after the academy, STEM faculty, there's 3 things I'm going to point out here. First of all, have an increased belief that professors play a role in students' successful completion of a course. So that belief is increased. They're more aware of the different experiences that students bring into a class, and they're making more of an effort to support those differences. And all of those things are critical to inclusivity. So with those 3 things in mind, Benny, I'll turn it over to you first. Can you identify with these changes? And if so, how does your teaching look different as a result?
So I think that once again, go back to the communication, right? So it's just kind of how I communicate with my student, and then by persistently reaching out to them, I think some of them, I think I actually get like a couple of students that respond to me like within like a week or so, saying like they have never felt a professor who care about them so much, like not just like online classroom, but also like in-person classroom as well. So I think that speaks a lot how the humanizing experience, like providing them a very transformative learning experience. I think that's very important. Because that way they always say like, oh, thank you for always like encouraging me to continue, and then so that they just motivate to work. And oftentimes, maybe if in STEM discipline we maybe focus too much on the correct or incorrect, on the final answer, but students do spend a lot of effort trying to learn the material, And oftentimes that may not be showing up in maybe on the exam or in the homework assignment. So what I try to do is when I see them that doing the homework online, because I will see the little green dot, and I just quickly drop them in a message saying like, hey, I see you doing homework right now, keep up the good work, so that way they realize, oh, I recognize the effort. And then that in turn motivate them to maybe try to work on the problem a little bit longer. And sometimes I send a message saying, hey, I haven't seen, there's still 2 or 3 hours left before the due date. And I see you haven't quite finished your homework yet. If you have time, could you try to come back and give it another shot, another attempt for it, right? I think if you have to do it another time, maybe you can do it. And then after that, usually I will get a couple of students, they will just log in right away and then give it another attempt. I think those are very transformative experience for them because I believe their ability, they can do it. And so that in turns out the self-identity is like, oh, they can give it another attempt. And over time that works really well. And another thing that could be the bias from the student to the faculty. So for STEM faculty, oftentimes the student look at it as like, oh, you're just smart, intelligent, like naturally you're just smart so that you can answer all this question. So what I did was I just showed them an exam that I just did. My yesterday lecture, I showed them how I failed my exam. I showed one of my exams that I failed. And when they look at it at the beginning, they thought like, oh, well, not too bad, you get 55. But I was like, did you look at the total score? The total score is out of 150. It wasn't out of 100, it was out of 150. So it was like, and then someone said, yeah, that's about 37%. Yeah, that's about right. So I showed them, in my own discipline, I also fail. I think that also make them the connection saying like, hey, it's okay, right? Embracing that failure and then to keep going. That also transform how they work, because they always thought, or because maybe they look at me and say, oh, you must know how to do all the calculation, your math and all that. And because of all the different labels, I was like, no, look at my exam. I got 37%, worse than some of you got in your exam. But you have to keep working. And then I show them how my final grade I got at the end as well, so that they can see. And I told them this is why I structured the class the way I'm doing it now, so that you're not going to be judged based on one single exam, and you're not a failure if you fail one exam, but it's the progression that you're going to make. And then you still have lots of opportunity, like in terms of how you perform in my class. And then so that keep them motivated and keep working. So I think that will be my focus, and I'll let Jan continue.
Those are beautiful, specific examples. Thank you, Benny. Young, what would you like to add?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so it was a really good experience, to tell the truth. So before the academy, I created a document for student behavior entitled Professional Expectation of Student Behavior. So students should redesign and hand in at the first read. I did before this academy. But I believe students did not really read this document and practice the behavior written in the paper during a semester. I believe this kind of paper even can make a worse relationship between faculty and student. To really need signed document from students. So during the Humanized Online class, I practiced a warm demand pedagogy. It made student and faculty relationship. So I believe I do not need this kind of documentation anymore, because building relationship is critical for learning and teaching instead of just sign a paper. But building this kind of relationship cannot be accomplished easily. I believe a faculty need stamina, endurance, and grit, GRIT. But however, this relationship is building up. It is great for the class, but also the faculty themselves. Yeah. Because as a faculty, I can increase my stamina, endurance, and grit. So I feel I'm kind of like a different person than before. I can say, or can I say I'm a kind of humanist is right now. Yeah. So I feel I'm like mature, not just as a faculty, but as a human being. So this is kind of different. So if students think my faculty is a good person, like humanist, so that case, they do not hesitate to contact me because they already know who I am. So I mean, I'm not pretend to do something for you, not like this, because I'm that kind of person. I just do that. So that kind of approaching. So the first item is a professor play a role in student successful competition, of course. Yes, I agree. But actually, it's not like doing something. During this kind of humanized online class, I think faculty member mature and really feel like a senior professor. That kind of a good person. It's not like doing something, it's just itself, as person itself. So it is really great for me to teach class very effectively, but at the same time, it makes me, it's kind of humanizing on itself, right? I'm kind of humanist. So thank you very much.
So Young, I really appreciate you talking about what you did before the Academy and your choice to no longer have that clean prescriptive list of like how to be professional, right? We really like, let's, I always try to get people like, can you use another word other than professional? Like, what are you really asking for there? And a lot of it is about power, right? And so bravo to you. And I want to just thank you for sharing the change that you felt inside of yourself, which is what I'm hearing you convey, that you felt, you used the word grit to describe your own engagement with teaching. And that's something that you know, again, I know I'm very much inside the weeds with this, but one of the things that I see in my interactions with faculty and instructional designers coming out of it is that their engagement increases with their own work. And I think, and I should say more so faculty, because I've worked more with STEM faculty than I've had more interactions than with some of our instructional designers. And I should dig deeper into that. Our research didn't include our instructional designers in the study. But yeah, that engagement, the faculty engagement piece, I think is really very intriguing and something that could also be studied as a research thread moving forward. So thank you for sharing, both of you. We're going to move on to the next question. And this for this question, we'll hear from Benny, Young, and Roxanne. And I'm going to ask you, it's kind of a long question, so I'm going to ask you to try to, if you can answer in a couple of minutes, because we're getting a little close on time, and I just want to be sure that we don't cut folks off at the end, okay? So in the Academy, we talk about weeks 0 through 2 of an online course. So we start kind of a week before with a humanized pre-course contact with the liquid syllabus that includes a brief and perfect video and lots of other goodies. And we've had some examples shared earlier in the chat. I encourage more sharing. So we talk about weeks 0 through 2 of an online course as a high opportunity zone. This is when belongingness, uncertainty, and stereotype threat is peaked. Tell us about how warm demander pedagogy and the 8 elements of humanized online teaching are helping you to create cues of trust and identity safety in this high opportunity zone. And I'll go to, and I'll just throw these other questions in there if they resonate with you. We're interested in seeing if, you know, any positive impacts that you're seeing in your students, whether it be something very tangible or just something more anecdotal. And we'll go to Benny first.
Thank you, Michelle. So I would say, I would like to create, you know, like my introduction video. I really like that because I can really give them an idea about who I am. Other like, you know, things that they can know more about me, like being an immigrant, English is my second language, and first generation, you know, going to college. So I think right away, I try to build that connection with my student. That's why I say I would like to use the word connection at the very beginning of my introduction, is to really want to start building that relationship. And then also with the getting to know you survey, then I can know a little bit more about the student. And then, of course, I use the note section in the Canvas as well. And then so I can keep track of, like, you know, is there anything that I need to pay attention to them? You know, like, and then remind me, like, how I should approach, like, communicating with the student so that, you know, and try to make sure that they don't, they feel welcome. and I think inclusive. I think that's important. And then for me teaching chemistry, I have a little like assessment, not like assessment, like the assignment at the beginning to see where they are in terms of their previous like chemistry knowledge, because I teach a second semester of general chemistry. So I need to make sure that they know like sufficient like math or the Gen Chem 1 knowledge. So when they do the assignment, then I can see, okay, if some student they're a little bit falling behind, then I reach out to them saying like, hey, you know, I have students, they were in the same situation. They haven't taken chemistry for 5 years, 7 years. They go through it, stick with it. They are still able to do well in the class. I think just reaching out to them early instead of feeling discouraged or put like they don't belong to the class. And I think that changed the mindset. And of course, I also have to tell them they have to work very hard to get back where they are, but it is doable because I have students who have done it before and I witnessed it. I help them along the way. Just reach out to me. I think that opportunity zone, the first week or two before they drop the class, I think that's very important.
It's really cool to hear. It's just so cool to hear all of this in motion coming from you all. So great. Young, what would you like to add to that?
Oh, yes. So actually, liquid syllabus really helped. I never really think of a syllabus before the starting semester. It was great approaching. And I call liquid syllabus stylish syllabus. So as I tried to make very stylish, so students like it. They already know it already melt their heart. And another one is the self-affirming icebreaker. Is great. I ask them, what is a good teacher for your experience? In that case, I already get a hint from them. And another one, using this activity, they are familiar with Flickr, that's software, the program. And immediately after that one, I share a very inspiring movie about the physical education teacher and his philosophy. And actually, it's very matched with my philosophy to show them, and they just reply to each other, and they can figure out, wow, this kind of professor, which kind of philosophy he has. So it's kind of a 0 to 2 week is really important, because several years ago, I showed them ending of the class. That was a big mistake. Right? They already, it's too late. So for me, like the liquid syllabus and getting to know survey also too. And icebreaker, it's really icebreaker. So 0 to 2 week, I plan more like seriously to make that. So that kind of relationship drive to whole class on the ending of the semester. It was really good experience for me. Thank you.
That's beautiful. Yeah, the self-affirming icebreaker, we haven't talked about that much, so I'm glad that you brought that up, Young. And that is a practice that is really about getting students to share things that they feel proud of or things that they feel good about at the start of the course. So we're going there before we get to the content. There's been some research that shows that if we have students also reflect on their values, like actually do a short writing assignment about their values and then discuss them, that is an impactful way to kind of bolster and mitigate the stereotype threat and the belongingness uncertainty. And there's been some research around that. So thank you for sharing. Roxanne, do you have something to add real quickly there?
I do. I won't say anything about what Benny and Young said, except that I agree completely with what they said. Another element that I really liked was the wisdom wall.
Oh, good.
So the wisdom wall is something that at the end of my first semester teaching a humanized class, I asked my students to post a short video about what you should do to succeed in the class. And then at the beginning of this semester students get to see what last semester students say. And what I loved about it was, what do we always tell our students? Study regularly, don't cram at the last minute, do the reading, take notes, blah, 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 blah. And, it goes in one ear and out the other. Those are all the things that my students were putting into the wisdom wall. So this semester, students got that information from previous students, not from me, which I think has a little bit more believability to the students. It's not just, Charlie Brown's teacher up at the front saying, wah, wah, wah. The other thing I wanted to say is that I made some changes, some serious changes to my Canvas page, adding pictures, making it more humanized. And I changed my homepage, from this big long list of everything that's happening all semester to really basically just a video of me saying, welcome to the class, start here. A couple of links to really crucial things. And even I can see when I look at it, it feels more welcoming. And I think it's worked. I am recently recovering from COVID, and I basically missed 2 weeks of classes, the synchronous course meetings. And I know that I have a better reaction, a better community with my students because I don't know if you can see this, not really. They created a get well card for me. It's not something that they downloaded. They made it, and it's got pictures and little blurbs from all the students saying, hope you feel better. Thank you for everything you've done. And I got it. And, my husband walked into the room and he was really worried because I was all teary. I had to tell him, no, these are happy tears. My students care. And so, not only are students persisting better in the classes, but they are actually, me sharing with them that I'm sick, this is what's happening, I'm doing my best. They understood, and they are, we're having a relationship here of almost equals. I'm not sort of this person up here telling them what they must do. We're all working together, and I really, really appreciate that.
It's a different type of authority, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're moving from positional authority to relational authority, and that's exactly what you described there. And that's often one of the hesitations that I hear from STEM faculty about the concept of humanizing is like everything's going to go crazy. Like they're going to walk all over me, and it's still a form of authority. It's just that it's relational. So it's beautiful that your students did that. Thank you for sharing. I'm sorry that the Zoom virtual background messed with your willingness to share it with us, but we appreciate the effort. Thank you so much, Roxanne. That's beautiful. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next question. We don't want to suggest, this is an important one. We don't want to suggest that humanizing is everything or that it's some panacea that's going to fix everything. Okay. So what are the challenges or drawbacks of humanized online teaching? That's what I want to ask our participants. And we have Angelica and Young identified as respondents. I'm going to start with Angelica just because we haven't heard much from her, and I'm starting to feel really badly for not having you be included, Angelica. So why don't you answer that question, Angelica?
Sure. So what I found this past year with a more humanized course is that students feel a lot more comfortable telling me all the bad things that are going on in their lives. Not to just like have me feel sorry for them, but just so like they just genuinely want to let me know like, hey, I missed this assignment because my uncle died and I went to the funeral, or my daughter is on suicide watch and I'm taking care of my elderly mother and, aunt, and I have cancer. So I've heard just, especially this past semester, so many students really sharing like what's holding them back or what's, not letting them maybe turn in assignments when they want to turn them in or when they're due. And that's been really heavy for me to carry. And so I haven't had students share this much before. And it's just, I mean, sometimes I dreaded opening up my email because there was one week where I had 3 students telling me you might have noticed that I haven't been doing the best in the class, or you might have noticed a drop in my performance, but I'm having a really hard time with, my divorce and fighting for custody of my daughter. Or, somebody had a nephew die in the shooting in Sacramento that happened, several weeks ago. And that is just really, for me, it's really difficult to hear, because I think in my classes, you become, at least I do, become invested in my student success. And so just hearing about that is just so overwhelming. I mean, I go to therapy once a week, and it's helpful when I ask my therapist, how do you deal with hearing about so much trauma? Because, man, it's tough. And, I got some recommendations, but still, I feel like there needs to be maybe something done to help us, process and, figure out how to do this without getting burnt out. Because, I mean, it's good that I feel honored that the students trust me with that information, but it's also really, really tough to manage and not be exhausted emotionally, every week.
Yes, dealing with trauma is not something that comes along with a PhD or a master's degree, is it? Right? So yes, I there has been quite a bit of writing about the need to support faculty with trauma, with mental health support. And I'd really like to know, since we have about 100 people in attendance, what is going on at your colleges? Are you seeing an effort to support faculty more holistically who are actively engaging with students? I would love to see. I'm going to share a hypothesis that there probably aren't many examples. And that is a sign of a problem. That is really a sign of a problem. Absolutely. Yeah. So Pam is saying, nope, totally absent. And I do also want to say that someone mentioned this in the chat, and it's really important to verbalize this, because when I heard someone say it to me, it was a really helpful reminder. And, in terms of what the role of a counselor is and what the role of a faculty member is. I'm not saying this in any way, shape, or form to diminish that compassion fatigue that you're describing, Angelica. I completely honor that, but I think as an instructor, it can be helpful to remember that, like, we are not trained as counselors, and that it makes perfect sense. In fact, it's the right thing to do to communicate that to students if they're, if you feel like your student needs support, and to do a warm handoff to a counselor, and to let students know it's not because I don't care, it's because I do care. And there's someone at our institution who can help you in this way. So thank you for sharing that, Angelica. And I do hope that institutionally, systemically, we start moving in that direction. And Young, would you like to add to that?
Angelica, thank you for sharing. For me, there are not too many students really open to their situation to me, so I didn't really think about it. So my point is a little bit different here. So since 2015, I developed virtual lab, but I had a problem to deliver this lab to the student. But it's because I already developed, I have a content. So that case for me is a Humanizing Online I thought it perfect to me to deliver, no problem. But how about like junior faculty, junior instructor, just hired? They should time to develop content itself. But 8 elements sometimes overwhelming. So wow, I can do that, but actually they feel about lack of their content. So no time to do. So it should be balanced, isn't it? So this case, I would like to ask our faculty member who would like to apply to not try all of them. Maybe this semester, liquid syllabus, like that kind of should be strict. And you should spend time, your content is that one. And another one as a second language. My biggest challenge for Humanizing Online is captioning, subtitle. Most of the time for me, how to increase my grit. should I do this captioning or not? Just using Zoom recording automated caption or spend time to fix all of them because I have a strong accent. So it makes very challenge, but at the same time, improve again. But anyway, this kind of a challenge too. But it should be mandatory, we should do. But if I say challenge, like 8 element can be overwhelming as a faculty member, he start right now. And another one as a second language, captioning was very challenging to me. But I think I can overcome, and this is very important for our students also. Thank you.
Those are really powerful contributions. Thank you, Young. I want to start with the captioning. Yes, I acknowledge the privilege of speaking English as a first language. And in the academy, everyone in the academy learns how to record videos in multiple different ways: a phone, using Screencast-O-Matic, using Adobe Spark, which is now called Adobe Express, and upload those to YouTube. Wait for the auto captioning, and then go in and edit those auto captions. So as Young is describing, the amount of time that it takes to edit the auto captions really varies based upon how well the algorithms in YouTube will make sense of the words that you're speaking. And those who speak another language as a first language other than English certainly are at a disadvantage there. So that's really important to point out. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And the idea of humanizing for faculty who are just beginning and don't have all of their content yet. Yeah, like I think you can drop in various places, but in terms of those 8 elements, I think what's most valuable to someone getting started is the warm demander pedagogy, just having that mindset. And I really want to underscore that because I'm very aware of the critiques about equity is not a checklist. Equity is not a checklist. And I really want to underscore that when we show the 8 elements, it's that warm demander pedagogy that does allow us to critically interrogate our teaching as we move forward with applying those 8 elements. So thank you for those contributions. So we're coming to our wrap up here now. And I've got 2 more questions. The first one is going to go to Roxanne and Young. And it is, what advice would you give a faculty member or institutional leader who thinks online classes are isolating and impersonal? Roxanne and then Young.
Yeah, I think this is great. I would say that as you can add the humanizing, excuse me, the humanizing tools and the warm demander pedagogy, and the ability to express your personality and make connections with students, I think that the online class can actually be more personal. When you are in a face-to-face class, you've got that sea of students in front of you, unless you're lucky enough to teach a class to, 10 or 15 students. There are those students, and I was one, who's sitting in the back and never opens their mouth during class. But when you're online, every student is expected to contribute to, say, a discussion or something like that, and they can express themselves without speaking in front of everybody. That makes it much less scary. For me, that was always why I didn't say anything. That's a dumb question. I don't want to answer that. And so since I've been teaching online, I have heard from more students, and I've learned some amazing things from some students who would never have spoken up in class, but have these really amazing contributions in, say, a discussion. So I think that there is great potential for any online class.
Young, what would you like to add?
Oh yeah, thank you. I strongly agree, Roxanne. Right, this is really personal. Yeah. But to tell the truth, that question I thought before the academy. I believe if somebody asked to me, I think I didn't change my mind. Very strong opinion at that time I had, but not right now. So I believe for me, how I do, I just want to how can I just try to approve it, try to prove it in our department, our university. See, this is really personal, how students like it, or like how work well and teach better than even in-person classes. So yes, I would like to keep sharing, but at the same time, I just practice at our department. Maybe students can talk to each other and talk to their professor, their demand. So it can change. So who knows? Department can be humanized, college can be humanized, whole university humanized. So like that kind of approach. So I believe, I promise Michelle and our participants, I just prove it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Young and Roxanne. That was beautiful. We've got one more question, and I'm going to hear from Benny, Angelica, and Paula. And I'd like to ask the attendees, if you have a question that you'd like to ask, we'll have a few minutes at the end. So I'd like to invite you to use the raise hand feature, and that'll send me the cue that you want to ask a question with your microphone. So the last question is, if you could wave your magic wand, what is one thing you would wish for to move STEM to a culture of care? Benny.
I think the easiest way to implement is if you have a weekly discussion, ask your student, what is one thing that happened in their life that make them happy? It doesn't have to be academically related. And once I start this question every week, I get to know them a lot more. It can be just like celebrating the dog birthday. It can be like they just being able to have time to walk around the park, and you get to know them a lot more in a more humanized level. So I think that will be one thing to consider implementing.
That is a beautiful idea. I love that. Angelica?
If I had a magic wand, I would make sure that all the STEM faculty had a growth mindset. Because I've read research that says that not even being the same ethnicity or, just all these different factors didn't matter as much for student success as having a professor who has a growth mindset. So I think that would be really helpful.
There is research that shows STEM faculty who do not have growth mindsets have bigger racial equity gaps in their courses. Yeah. Thank you for calling that out, Angelica. And Paula?
I would wish for a big budget so that we could train, have the STEM Academy, bring that to everybody, and also to teach people to be mentors, that train people so that they could go and mentor their colleagues on how to humanize their courses, and they could stay with them like through the course of the quarter or however long it takes for them to learn how to create a humanized course.
Absolutely. Those peer-to-peer connections are so important. And I didn't mention this, but we did have a small community practice, which actually Young, Roxanne, Benny, and Angelica, you all participated in, right? That came out of the Academy. And I think that is really a powerful model that we want to continue to play with moving forward if we do get more funding. But for those of you who are thinking about adopting the Academy, that's something that could come out of it, right? Starting like maybe bi-weekly or just monthly check-ins for folks to come in and share what they're doing. I saw someone post in the Padlet saying, who can look at my liquid syllabus and give me some feedback? Like those are the kinds of communities we need to see happen so that these 8 practices can be adopted and adapted. And like when we're teaching, I always think of teaching as like stew, which I know sounds really weird, but let me explain, right? You take these, you may hear of ideas or things you think you're supposed to do, right? And you put the potatoes and the carrots in there. And then after the stew cooks for a while, they start to fall apart and get all mushy. And that's when the stew that's when it becomes stew. Well, that's when you know it's your course. So like these elements, I think about them as starting points. They're entrance points, and how they're going to evolve within everyone's course is going to be a beautiful thing to explore. And the more we can get get faculty to be sharing that together and looking at each other's work and in a supportive environment regularly would really be powerful. So, and I would love to see that money come along with that magic wand wave too, Paula. So thanks for putting that out there into the universe. Okay, so we've got about 5 minutes left, and I do see a hand up. So I am going to turn it over to Kathleen. Kathleen, you should be able to unmute yourself. Let me see if I have to ask you. Does that work? Don't hear you yet. Oh, actually, it looks like Kathleen's not at her desk. Maybe she stepped away for a second. Okay. That's when it's helpful to have a webcam turned on, huh? All right. So any other questions? Oh, it was up for a while. Thanks, Sean. I'm sorry that I just got to it. Kathleen. Hi, Kathleen. I see you there. Would you?
Sorry, I had a student walk in.
Oh, of course, no problem. I'm sorry. I hear that we left you hanging there for a while. So do you have a question you'd like to ask?
No, you said you wanted, I guess, I don't remember. You said to put up a hand.
Gotcha.
And it's been in the chat, but you know, I think everybody, whether we realize it or not, we have all gone through trauma of 2 years of uncertainty with COVID. And if I'm actually asking anyone, even all of our 90 whatever 4 participants here, if anyone knows of resources in how to deal with it ourselves, but also, you know, hearing that we are not counselors, but you know, what are things that we can do to help our students? If anyone knows of resources, somebody who's worked something up, you know, whatever. I've been requesting it from like our professional development people, but they haven't been able to find anything either.
I don't know if she's still here. Is Mace IMAD still here? I don't think so. Let me just check the list.
Well, I can share that at our campus. We have a pirate care. So I make it, so it's like students can access a mental health professional 24/7, and I make it an extra credit assignment for them to download the app on their phone early in the semester. So when they're telling me that they're struggling with something, I can say, hey, remember, you can reach out to someone and talk to them. But I feel like that's not enough. I mean, yes, it's there, but I feel like students need more.
Yeah.
And Renee, I see your hand up. You have something you want to add to Kathleen's comment, or do you have a new question, or do you want to add something, Renee?
I want to add something. I posted something in the chat as well about great teachers. And this is regarding we as faculty feeling overwhelmed, feeling like we're not doing as much as we should, feeling like we're doing too much but not of the right thing. There is an organization, and it's been around since the 70s. Every year they have an event in the summer. They might have their first one after COVID this year. And there's also one in Hawaii. Most faculty development funding, your individual funding, can be used to go. It's a nominal fee. It used to be $800 for a full week. And the discussions center around you as the teacher, you as the person. So it goes along with the same idea of humanizing, though they don't use that word, but it's really about getting to know how to manage your own personal stress and the stress you take in from students and administrators, et cetera. So I recommend that.
I'm going to put a link in the chat. I think it's a really long link, but it's for the California Great Teachers Seminar that happens every summer. I've attended a Great Teachers Seminar. It was about 15 years ago. And Renee, it has played a big role in my thinking about humanize, as like subconsciously or unconsciously. Anyway, thank you for suggesting that. It's a beautiful model. And I think it's a model that should be rolled more intentionally into professional development across the board, because it supports exactly what you're talking about. It's like, it's a getaway. We're going to come together for 3 days, 4 days, and just talk about teaching. And it's not talking heads. Like the days are very open-ended and unscripted. And you start with kind of some ground rules. And David Gottschall, the founder of Great Teachers, talks about it like a glass bowl. We are the vessel, and you're all going to step into it, and we're just going to be together and find the great teacher within us. So I'm really happy that you brought that to the surface. Thank you so much. Let's see. Any other questions or responses to that wonderful question that we just had? I'll share something that I do. I've never been a big meditator, but meditation is something that is super helpful. I started using the Calm app. I have my medical insurance through Kaiser, and Kaiser gives us free premium access to the Calm app. And I had it on my phone for months and months and months. And I have a meditation. I always put it on now before I go to bed, and it helps me tremendously. I know others out there are meditators, so if you have resources or suggestions to share. But something else that I started doing, and this is I super quick, and try it, but just waking up every morning and asking myself, how are you today? It just quickly in my mind, how are you today? And doing that self-check, because it allows me to really be more aware of how I'm feeling. And that is knowledge that I can use to guide my day. So when I'm, I don't just go straight, especially since, I work at home, I don't have anything, there's nothing to unpack. There's no time to unpack. It's like I wake up, I showered, I'm in my seat, right? And so having that opportunity to do that self-check, and of course, we all know exercise is helpful too. But that's something that's been very helpful for me to know when I need to give myself some grace. Yeah, well, what do I do if I'm not okay? That depends on the day. And every day you have things that you can take on, or maybe things that you can't take on. You've got to use that to navigate your day. And when you can back out of something, I know that's a privilege that we don't always have, but sometimes it is. Like we also need to be conscious about, saying no to things. And that's something else I do. Like I'll get a speaking engagement that may be an amazing opportunity, and saying no to that is something that I've, do because I'm like, I don't have time in my life for, I have the time, but I don't have the space for that. So I think keeping that in mind as we move forward. And I realize that you're all thinking about, well, that's great, but I have this that I can't let go of. And that's absolutely true. But just, I think maybe thinking more holistically about the things that we do have control of, and we can say no to things. Deep breathing. I love my dogs. They make me feel good. I have 2 miniature wiener dogs that I love. Walking, Jennifer, thank you. I have a block that I walk around, 15-minute block that is just, it's a great break for my day, especially when the weather's nice. Vitamin D boost. Does our panel have anything to add to that question?
Well, I have had a number of things that have occurred in my life that have kind of helped me to refocus my priorities. When I became a mother, my daughter was born 11 weeks early. And I had to focus on her needs. That helped me to sort of change. I'm very much a perfectionist, and that helped me a little bit. And probably about 8-9 years ago, I realized that I had a chronic condition that causes chronic pain. And so it's still something I struggle with, but a lot of the things people have been talking about are definitely important for me. And sort of, I love that rose and that quote you started with, Michelle, because that really helped me to realize that Yeah, there are days when I can't do anything. There are days when I just say, I'm staying in bed all day. I can't. I just can't. And I'm trying to learn that that's okay, and certainly not to compare myself to previously. So I a lot of times think about back when I was young and I didn't have any pain and I could do anything I wanted to do and I could go all day long. And it's definitely something, if you don't know anything about it, there is something called spoon theory, which is I don't have spoons with me, but I'll grab a few pens. Just that the spoons are the energy you have for the day, and you have to consider how many spoons you have and what you're doing, how many spoons it's going to take, and then prioritize what you're going to do and when you're going to do it, and realize that if you don't do it today, well, there's tomorrow. And I'm definitely very much in progress on trying to really get this, because I still have days where I say, but I used to be able to do that. Why can't I do it today? And, I have a wonderful family that helps me, my husband, my daughter. I talk with my mom a lot. I mean, I pretty much talk to my mom every day since my dad died, because she had never lived alone. And it's turned into a very important part of my day. I think everybody has to find really what works for you, and forgive yourself when you don't get things done.
Beautifully said. Thank you for sharing, Roxanne. Yeah, you're getting some thank yous there from Julie and from Nicole. Yeah, you just made me reflect on that spoon. It was a good analogy for what I was trying to describe with how I navigate my days, because there's things that I'll think, if my cup is full when I wake up, right, I don't have much room left for many spoons. So I'm not going to do that today. I'm not going to do that today. That'll wait for tomorrow. And hopefully tomorrow will be a better day. And I'm going to focus on the things that I have to do today. Right. So yeah, that's really beautiful. I like that concept. Renee, I see your hand up, and I'm not sure if it's still up from before or if you have something else you'd like to contribute. So I'll just let you unmute if you want to say something.
No, I'm sorry. It's an old hand.
I'll lower it. That was my job, and I forgot to
do
that. Oops. There we go. So we are now in the wrap-up phase of our academy. We've got 8 minutes left, and I want to just keep this open. I like the supportive, safe space that we've made for sharing. And I'm going to be quiet and see if there's anything else that anyone wants to ask, or if there's anything from the Padlet that we want to bring over into this session to address. Kim, I saw you mention that there's possibly one thing.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I'm traveling and my internet keeps being unstable. So Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you sound great.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody. So one of the things that actually came up earlier, and there was a little conversation about, and so I just want to kind of open that up and see, what others might have to share about this. But the comment was, I'm struck by the participant demographics. So participants in the academy, mostly white females. Is that because the participating departments are composed of primarily white females? Or are white females more likely to participate in professional development opportunities like this? And then someone else asked, or they were also curious about what disciplines people were in. And there's a couple other comments around that. So I don't know if Michelle, Mike, anyone wants to speak to that. I mean, I have some thoughts, but I'd like to just kind of open that up.
So I can speak to the white females are very overrepresented in professional development in general. The kind of professional development that is offered is also conducive to white females, right? It's really important to recognize that the types of opportunities we put to the questions that we ask are also deeply informed through culture and identity. And so these things kind of go hand in hand. So for myself, when I look back at the thousands and thousands of individuals who have come through the professional development over the past 10 years that not me, but my team has been a part of, largely white females. But in this academy, what I saw was actually more people of color than usual. We didn't collect that data, unfortunately. Well, actually, I take that back. Our research team has that data, but I haven't actually looked at it. So I can't actually address that question specifically. That's just my anecdotal kind of perception compared to my past experiences. So I think we'll see that more clearly when we get the final research kind of put together. But yeah, this is a very, feminist approach to teaching and learning. So those who kind of are already identifying with non-dominant identities, I think it makes sense for there to be more of a connection there and an interest in those who opt in, and that is who we're dealing with. Yeah. Renee, I see that hand again.
Yeah, that hand's legit.
Okay.
I did want to make a comment about that, because I don't know if you recall, Michelle, but a couple of years ago, before I think it was the first announcement we had about the Academy, I remember looking through and I remember being, I remember seeing lots of white faces. And I remember emailing you about that and saying, I'm really concerned. I don't see people of color here. And by the way, I do this on almost everything. If I don't see people of color, I mention it to whomever it regards and say, we need to as much as possible. And I remember you emailing back and saying that you're right, they're not there, and we'll work on that, but we do have people of color working on the project. And then, of course, when I joined the Academy, Fabiola was my humanizing mentor. And in the Academy itself, it was pretty diverse in terms of the colleagues I had. And I think the real factor is, again, this is STEM, and STEM has fewer women and fewer people of color. And so the fact that we have more women, I think, is really demonstrating our lead to getting more women in the field in STEM fields. But there is still work to do with people of color, most definitely. And I personally would love to see this kind of model used in other ways to promote STEM for my group, the Latinx community, with programs like Puente, for example. So putting that out there. Thank you.
Absolutely. And I do remember your email. You flat out said, Michelle, representation matters. And I said, you're absolutely right. And this is something that our team is still talking about. And as part of our new grant, if we do get it, which I don't know if we will, but one of our number one objectives is to intentionally diversify our facilitation team. So we know that that's really, really important. And we know that it will only strengthen our team also when in our project by doing so. So thank you for that, calling that out, Renee, very appreciated. Couldn't agree more. Yes, Fabiola is amazing. Fabiola Torres. Let me put her name in the chat so everybody knows who we're talking about. And you can follow, is Fabiola here? I don't know. You can follow her on Twitter at I Learn Now. Yeah, okay. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up, folks. This was phenomenal. And thank you for hanging in there to the very end. I hope that this brought some much needed kindness and joy and appreciation to your week. And I'll be working on the archives, and I will ask Dr. Estrada about sharing her slides. I know we got that question, but I haven't asked her yet. So I will ask that, and we'll have the archives shared hopefully within the next week or so. I do plan to chunk it up for each session, so it'll take me a little bit of time to do that, and that will be shared on our site. So thanks